really, you know, I always, you know, I've been doing this a long time and I've worked on big facilities a long time. And I always refer to some of the legacy buildings, and yours is really one of the end of the Gen 1 buildings that's really done right.
That's cool.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Just,
because it was Gen 1, but not legacy. Like some, because legacy, honestly, I'll be honest, here in Colorado,
contact, when people using contactors and stuff like that.
Remember when we would go through like office buildings and they're growing in like the hallways and shit?
Yours, the way Anthony set it up is great. I love it. The winches is great. Like I said,
we're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jared, Gabe, Rambo, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Brought to you by the good people at 5-8. And now we have JugDealers.net. It is up and running.
Yes, so the shop is rocking. Everything's up.
Psyched.
We're sending orders out. We're sending merch out. Anything you see that's available here, you know, also kind of our normal call out. If you guys are interested in anything you see, anything we talk about, hit us up. We'd love to put some samples in your hands. Specifically, if you're having any problems with thrips, which I know a lot of people that were using spinosad.
It's always a problem. And the spinosad.
And that's become kind of a boom, boom. So specifically,
it was so effective.
It was so good. And then rusted as well. So, you know, anybody that's either in, you know, commercial facilities or tents or anything in between, get a hold of us. We'd love to put some product in your hands. And without further ado, Gabe, why don't you introduce our very special guest that we have today?
Today, we are here with Leslie from the Mountain Orchid. And for those of you who don't know, the Mountain Orchid is the highest cultivation in the country. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think it's the highest cultivation in the world. That's not just a pun on, that's not just a play on words. You guys are literal. You're literally like 10-3, 10-4, 10-4, 10-4, 10-4. So for any of the fighters out there, you know, I know everybody, Leadville, Alta, which city is the highest in the country? Yes, those are incorporated towns, but
they don't have
Montezuma is at 10-4. You guys decided to set up a cultivation up there, which is pretty cool, nestled in the mountains. But before we talk about the cultivation, I want to talk about your history, as we do with all our guests. We want to dig in. We want to get below the surface.
Scratch in there a little bit.
Find out who you are. Because you do, I'll be honest with you, you do some really unique stuff up there. But I think that comes from the fabric of who you are and the ethos of who you are. So let's dig in. First question, as always, where'd you grow up? What's your family like? Like, what were your parents like? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name's Leslie Davis. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri.
Woo-woo. Missouri.
Yep.
Show me, baby.
Exactly. And I went to high school there. You know, my parents, I actually had a pretty blessed childhood. My parents were very kind of straight edge, normal. You know, I got to go to the country club every summer and go do golf and tennis and swimming and a lot of outdoor sports and biking. So that was really cool. But my mom actually, growing up, we had over probably like 400 to 600 houseplants. I mean, she went crazy. We had over 200 orchids alone. And those were all in her greenhouse.
Dude, much like Fletcher, dude. That's amazing. That's great. I wish I'm going to have to introduce you to Fletcher next time.
I'd love to. I love orchids. They're so cool. And my mom, when I was growing up, she used to actually have people come over. They would give her orchids. She would get them to bloom, and then they'd come pick them up and take them away. And as a child, I'd always be like, why are you blooming the orchids to give them away? And now as I'm older, I see how difficult it is to keep an orchid blooming, to keep them alive, you know, to do that. So she was loving doing it just for her friends, just to get them going and then send them out to their homes and bring them back. And so I got to grow up around a lot of horticulture, which was awesome. And that's obviously where my interest began.
Well, you know, and in fact, it's so difficult to keep orchids consistently blooming. There's people that make a whole business out of actually just
100%
storing them, getting them to bloom. There's actually one in Louisville, Colorado, or at least there was for the longest time. And yeah, a big part of their business is just getting them blooming so people can bring them back into their homes. Largest plant family out there, by the way, Orchidaceae. So a little tidbit for you there. I believe there's over 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000
something
plus.
like that. Yeah, 5,000 plus. So awesome. Right off the top of my head. And
the thing about orchids too is if you can grow orchids, you can grow anything.
Well, here's something interesting too. They're an epiphyte, right? And the people don't realize that. They like to think about it. It looks a little bit parasitic, but it doesn't live off the plant at all. It's an epiphyte because it grows on a plant, but it gets all its own nutrients still. So it takes nothing from the plant that it's actually growing on. And that's why it actually has photosynthetic roots as well. Those are spongy green roots because they're actually using that to pick up the water that's running down the side of the tree, but they're also photosynthetic. So really interesting stuff. Gotta love orchids.
Grambo, the more you know star, let's just have that. Let's just have that fly right across now. And
I'll find that.
And we're back.
No, God, I couldn't agree more. There is so much about orchids. And I do love seeing them down in Mexico, like when they're growing on the trees and on the branches. And people always were asking me, like, the roots are crawling out of my pot and I don't know what to do, and it's so weird. But I always think, like, look at it on a tree. That's how they're trying to do here.
I spent a bunch of time in Thailand and they're out in the jungle and stuff. And you're just like, they're amazing flowers. They're amazing flowers.
Well, and it was funny too, when I was 22 years old, after I graduated college, I moved out to Montezuma, and Anthony, my partner at the time, or partner now, but at the time was just a good friend, came over to my house, and I had about 10 orchids blooming. And he was like, you have orchids blooming above 10,500 feet. And
this dry.
Like, yeah. And I was like, yeah.
So you went from, did you go to college in Missouri?
I went to school in Ohio.
Okay.
And then, and I was just going to plug this little thing, then we can go back if you want. But it was kind of funny. He saw my orchids blooming and he was like, you are the mountain orchid. And so that was like 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, wow.
And he's like, have you ever grown cannabis?
Speaking of about 20 years ago, I believe Gabe and I are a little remiss in not wishing you a very happy birthday.
I was going to say.
I know we did already, but officially
I did yesterday when it was. But no, you are correct. We should have started the show. Happy birthday.
Thank you. It was an awesome day. Happy to be here.
So, so we have a couple questions we like to ask all our guests. What's your first cannabis experience?
Yeah, when did that come in your life?
Did your parents? I mean, you said they were pretty straight, so they were not cannabis users.
They were definitely.
The question: are they cannabis users now?
They are not cannabis.
Okay, I was curious. Sometimes in the old age,
sometimes things
parents are like, something's really been hurting me for the last 20 years.
Well,
I understand cannabis helps.
Well, and my mom is open to it. My father's no longer with us, but my mom is open to it, and a couple of her friends are definitely trying gummies with back pain. And I did send her home with some, and she tried them, but it just didn't really do what she was looking for.
Well, it doesn't jive with everybody. I mean, and I know that I've got a similar scenario as you in the sense that I grew up in Kansas City, other side of Missouri, also on a river. But pretty conservative upbringing, going to church on Sundays. My parents were pretty pretty open, before having kids and whatnot, but definitely weren't smoking, never saw it around them. I have since got them back into the life, which is always kind of fun. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, in Missouri at that time, it was like, cannabis. I mean, what I knew about cannabis at that time was that if you want cannabis, go to Colorado. It was kind of or California, that was kind of like the prevalent, information.
My mom was the pot smoking mom, like among all my friends, like nobody had other friends who had pot smoking moms. But it's funny because we did the Wolf episode not too long ago, and like Wolf's parents were like drug dealers, and I was like, yeah, man, like it's good. Like it's always nice for me to find someone I can or like Adam Dunn's parents, you know what I mean? But it's funny because most of us, even if we got into cannabis, we had normal folks, doctors, lawyers, insurance salesmen, whatever.
By and large.
In which, if you were in high school and you got caught with weed, like you got in trouble, what I mean? Me, there was no getting, my parents found, if I got in trouble with weed, they were like, where's the weed? Like, we want to smoke something.
No, I'm taking it from you because I'm going to smoke it.
So what was your first cannabis experience?
I didn't learn from my parents, that's for sure, but I did have a big sister.
That'll do.
Big sisters.
That'll work. Yeah.
Big sisters are the best.
They really are.
I got big brothers and sisters. So.
I know. And I've got an older brother and an older sister. My brother is 8 years older, so I was a little bit further removed from my childhood. But my sister, only being 4 years older, we're very tight. And so she's definitely kind of guided a lot of my direction in life, I'd say. But she took me to my first Grateful Dead show.
I knew that was going to be it. I just knew it. I didn't ask any of this before the show because I wanted the real, genuine surprise. What was your first show?
Cats out of the bag.
So it was in St. Louis in '94.
Okay.
So I only got to see one with Jerry. July 27th, actually, which is my husband's birthday.
Nice.
And the day I moved to Colorado. And
Wow, there's a lot of significance.
Hold on. So did you wait, hold on. That wasn't the first time smoking weed, was it?
So I was 14 and I think I had dabbled here and there with friends in like kind of basements and outside and stuff. That was the first really memorable one because there was these two older deadheads, and they were in a car and we were on the highway and it was just completely packed, parking lot. Nobody's moving for hours. People are just going to the bathroom on the sides of the car and doing whatever they can.
So you gotta do that.
What's the outdoor venue, I'm assuming?
Yep. It was Riverport Amphitheater.
What's that place hold?
Gosh, I don't know. It's a good size.
Because you remember like back in the day on those dead shows, man. I mean,
30,000.
So yeah, they would hold like you'd see like RFK or JFK. I mean, some of those places you'd be like 70, 80,000 people.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that large. Luckily, it was where we went to most of our outdoor concerts. So I was, well, in the future, this was my first one, but and so these guys get us in the car and they're like, we have this special red pipe, and it's like it had like 30 different mouthpieces coming off of it, and a bowl in the center. And
like a hookah,
but only one of them works. And they're like, only one of them actually connects to the bowl. All the other ones are just, false. And
bowl roulette.
And so they had like 100, those beautiful long beaded necklaces on their mirror that they were kind of selling on tour and stuff. And so he gives it to my sister. He lets her try it and she spins it and lights it and it doesn't hit. And he's like, he gives it to me and I spin it and I look and I choose the one spot and I hit it and it pulled, and they lost it. They're like, nobody has ever gotten it. They were so excited and they grab necklaces off the mirror and they give my sister and I 2 necklaces each and they're like, which I still have, which are so cool.
Oh.
And then they cut off the highway and they just beeline and drive straight to the venue and they just go through the fields and over and we were like, oh my God. Holy shit. They like drop us off right at the door and then they take off, and the police are now chasing them and everything. And my sister and I are now at the front door of the venue. So we're like, let's go.
Yeah.
And this is your first dead show.
Yeah, that was my first dead show.
That is a hell of a way to show up to your first dead show.
And that's my first real memory of like hitting a bowl and being, really proud.
And you with all that experience too, just there's your first time smoking for a lot of people, but then there's also your first time getting high.
Dude, I couldn't.
You know what I mean?
I know I got high the summer of 15, but I couldn't tell you what it was fucking like.
Right. And I remember my first time smoking, and not a lot happened, but I remember my first time really getting high.
I'll tell you what. I remember my first time doing LSD. Sure.
For another time. For another time.
Wasn't a dead show, but it was definitely a concert. I'm glad you got to experience that because that was really those shows were something special.
And that's the only time I actually got to see Jerry live, and I'll never forget. I mean, he was just glowing up there and everything. I mean, it was a definite epic experience. I won't take the whole episode explaining it all.
I'm sure our listeners, some of whom are old. I actually saw a guy in the comments who was like 68, but some of our listeners, if they ever saw him,
So obviously, you were out there, you're starting to see music and cannabis, as we all know. And that's one of the reasons that I love, and Gabe and I talked early on about this show about, really, I felt
culture.
I feel like you can take cannabis, you can put it in everything, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's things you wouldn't think about automatically, like MMA or extreme sports, even. Like cannabis is truly in everything and universal and has a spot everywhere and is universal. So, we kind of said, well, what's a show about? Well, if you say it's about cannabis culture, we literally could make a bet and make some sort of story for anything we feel like talking about. So obviously I'm a big cannabis fan and a big music fan, and definitely had a lot of those things that seem to just keep coming back and forth and recrossing themselves, over my existence. So it's interesting that that's kind of where, in a lot of ways, like you're. Oh,
for so many of us, it's the connection.
Right. Well, and even like, I know, like even with my wife, it wasn't the first time she smoked, it was the first time she smelled weed and knew what it was at a show that her dad took her to, you know what I mean? It's like, it's for so many people like that. And that was the safe place, right? You got to think about it, especially when you came out of the Midwest in cannabis, like the only time you could like somewhat freely consume cannabis was in a large group.
Yep.
That was it. And typically at a music event.
Or at my parents' house.
Well, right. I said the Midwest. Missouri. So don't call it Missouri for nothing. I love Missouri. That's not true.
Two questions. What'd you get your degree in college? And how the hell did you pick Montezuma? Because you said you went from college to Montezuma. Like I came to Denver and then I went to Gold Hill and then I went to how did you just get Montezuma? And what year did you go to Montezuma?
Okay. Well, so I went to Miami of Ohio, Miami University in Ohio and Oxford, Ohio.
Always confusing, but yes.
Exactly. And I started as pre-med. So I did all of my science courses and classes and everything.
Smarty pants.
As I got through like junior, senior year, I started realizing I didn't really want to go into the medical industry, but I wanted to teach. And so I kind of shifted gears and ended up graduating with my chemistry education degree. And I'd left a little part out. So I graduated college in 2002. Actually, I'm sorry. I graduated in 2001.
There you go.
Graduated in 2001. I moved to Colorado in 2002. I went and traveled around Europe for about a month. And then I moved straight to Colorado. I went to Denver first, was down there, and I taught calculus and chemistry in high school there for about 8 or 9 months. And then that
What high school?
Overland High School.
Okay.
And then that May, I actually moved. I met Jay, my husband at the time. I met him in Breckenridge that December, and we kind of started dating. And so I moved up to Summit County in May, and then the two of us moved to Montezuma that September. So we moved to Montezuma in September of 2002. And
so tell us a little bit about Montezuma, because there's even a lot of people in Colorado that don't know.
It's right there too.
No, it is right there. It's strangely right there. But yeah, okay. So you don't even have to tell them where it's at, but tell them a little bit about it. How many houses are there?
It's a very tiny town. We have, maybe 30, 35
There's no houses for sale.
Yeah. By the way, nothing's for sale, folks. Ain't nothing for sale. You're talking to the mayor here, all right?
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But yeah, so let's see, Montezuma, there's about 30 houses, 35. I think we say 74 year-round residents, and then probably another 30 or 40 second homeowners. So it's a tiny little town.
And you're a 10-4. I mean, what? So I was curious. I love going up there. There's a part of me I've lived in Colorado almost 30 years, and I lived in Gold Hill. I love the mountain towns. There's a very special nostalgia. The one thing about Montezuma is there's one way in, one way out. And as you know, anybody who's been in Colorado knows, over 10,000 feet, it's aggressive up there. It's not easy. So what was Montezuma, and why'd you pick it?
Let's see. There's no businesses up there. It's straight residential. There is some cottage industry, but it's just so tiny. And
no market, nothing.
Gas station. No gas station, no grocery store, nothing. And just a main street with about four
there it is.
Different.
There it is.
And we're
a storybook. You live in a storybook. That's amazing.
It is. But it is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not for the faint of heart. That much I can tell you.
It is hard roads.
It is definitely mountain living. That's to say the least. But we just absolutely love it. I remember the first time my husband drove, we were just dating at the time, and he drove me up to Montezuma just to check it out. And we pulled into town and immediately fell in love. I just thought, this place exists, just nestled in the mountain peaks right there. You literally walk right out our back door and you're in the national
forest. The moose the one time I was up there, just the moose in the backyard, just staring at you.
Yep. The moose are kind of our roommates almost part of the year. They hang out in the backyard and they just lay there for days at a time and eat the willows in the back. And we coexist with wildlife heavily, and with, and we have a really, really cool community. It didn't start out that way when we first moved there. We actually just moved there mostly for the mountains and the outdoors and the sports and all of that, and then kind of fell in love with it. And that's where, I guess, to lead into why I moved further into the government of the town there. It was just because we were.
So you're the mayor.
I am.
So for our listeners, she the mayor.
I'm the mayor of Montezuma. It's awesome. Well, so I've been there for 22 years now, 23 years. It's a good
stand for a mountain town, especially that small.
I know.
And you guys have stayed that small. I mean, they are if you want to look up where it is, that's fine. But they are in the thick of things, but they are extremely, they're very well hidden.
Yep. And we work hard to keep it that way.
And and not for nothing, for anybody who hasn't lived at that kind of elevation, even just for a winter or two, it's hard. It is hard. It is not easy. There's a lot of snow.
Yeah. I mean, even if you want to give anybody a little perspective, that's the base. That's the parking lot of Wolf Creek, and Wolf Creek has the highest base of any ski area in Colorado.
Right.
So to give you a little perspective, because it definitely gives me, I was like, ooh, 10-4. Because I do know what it's like being up there and working on that. And it's not easy. And I lived at more like 8-5, not, working at 10-4 and living at 10-4, different scenario.
You must come down here and you're like,
you're cheating. Yeah, when you're down here, you're cheaters. That's what I call the mountain folks. They're cheaters.
Definitely.
How'd you get to be the mayor?
So I was, we just kind of lived in the town and just loved it. And we had a bunch of our friends living there at the time and doing everything. But then there was a little bit of a division in town. There was some conservative families that had been in charge for probably the last 30 years prior to me living there. And they were it was right around when cannabis was becoming legal in the state as well, medically and everything. And these conservative families were just very against it, and they didn't want anything to do with it. And they were starting to kind of attack people who were starting to have their own medical personal grows. And I just started asking neighbors and was like, is that how everybody feels around here? And turned out nobody did. These couple families that were in charge.
If you want to change the government, go inside.
Yeah. And so I was like, if you're going to complain, you got to step up. And so I decided to, and I was also really unhappy with that kind of attitude they were having. It was causing town to be divided and causing people to not work together. Nobody wanted to be friends. It was everybody's kind of in their homes.
Working together is an essential part of mountain living. Like that is your neighbors. I mean, you really, really do rely on each other when you're up there. And it's a lesson that I had to learn, when I was an outsider moving in outside of Wolf Creek and going, oh man, you better meet some people like pretty quick or you're not going to last on an island out
mountain
here.
Folk. I got a buddy who spends a lot of time up in Minturn, and I'm like, hey bro, like you're here 2 weeks. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows who you are.
You may not know them yet, but they know you.
I mean, you pull into our town, everyone knows who you are.
Right. So, like you said. And then one thing I love about coming in to Montezuma is the dogs.
Dogs are special.
There's always a couple dogs.
There's always a few for your
I'm going to be real honest with you. I usually open the door and stop before I get to the building and say hi to the dogs.
We've got a one-stop sign in town, and we don't have leash law, so our dogs just roam around town, and they have their own full society and community, and everyone knows everyone, and they go get their own treats. And
good dogs.
As long as it's a good dog, it's allowed to roam free. If it's not, doesn't play nice, then it has to stay home. But yeah, so the dogs is a special part of our town for sure.
How long have you been the mayor?
I have been the mayor for 10 years now.
And I guess that did predate the grow and the whole the operation then. Okay. So I'm a little bit obviously, and I guess you can kind of
mayor to open the grow,
So you're the mayor and the local grow.
I like what you did there. I like what you did there.
Well, and I was actually on the town board for 5 years prior to being mayor. So
you've been very involved for a long time.
So it's been 15 years, I think, on the government now. And I did have a caregiver grow, personal kind of a medical caregiver grow in like 2010, 11, 12, and had that for a couple patients that were neighbors.
Which was common. Yeah.
And that's kind of where I ended up finding out so many of my neighbors were interested in being involved because they had it for medical reasons and they were into it. And I wanted to make sure that, I'm like, if we're going to, have this for medical reasons, I want to make sure we're growing the best quality we can, top ingredients, top everything. So that's why I kind of stepped into the growing part of it. So with mayor position, it just kind of followed along. Like I said, I didn't agree with a lot of the things that were going on in town. So I thought I'd step up, and it was a little bit turbulent to say the least for the first 3 or 4 years, maybe, with kind of going back and forth and figuring everything out. But now I'm so blessed to say the last 8 years or so, we have an amazing community. Everybody gets along so well. Everyone's kind of on the same page. And so now our biggest thing is just parties and community events and bands, and it's really cool. Which
I very much want to get into that here in a little bit. But before we get into the more the music part, you can see a little shout out to Billy Strings. Great show, buddy. Great show, Billy, on Saturday. I know you guys were there as well.
Yep.
So obviously you were a plant person. And the reason I want to make this point, so you started growing cannabis in Montezuma then, correct?
I did.
Okay. So this is something, obviously you got a little more into your adult life, started dabbling with it, but it felt very comfortable to you because you'd been around plants and you had also dealt with high-end horticultural, difficult plants. And I love making that point because so many times people think that cannabis is so unique in that, yes, it's a beautiful plant and it's a plant that we love, but it's also a C3 photoperiodic plant. There are many other plants on earth that are like it. It just so happens this one produces oils that has certain compounds and chemicals that we happen to love as humans and have a deep history and past with. But I don't like people to go, all I know how to do is grow weed. Incorrect. You know, incorrect. Go grow food, grow orchids, grow houseplants, have fun with it. And I do think that cannabis has been amazing, especially even in legalization. I've seen it more. I feel like pre-legalization, people thought, oh, this is all, if you know how to grow weed, that's all you can grow. Whereas now it's just become more of an overall plant thing. So I assume it was a pretty natural transition for you to jump in, know the plants, read the plants, feel the plants, learn more about it, about cannabis and you know, manipulate it, et cetera, but wasn't a hard process for you, no?
I would agree with that. It definitely horticulture. I already had 100 house plants or something.
Right.
I already been going into the
If you can do that,
garden,
you can grow weed, okay?
with many orchids, to say the least. But, you know, and I do always kind of giggle too when people are like, oh, it grows like weed. I'm like, yeah, that plant at the same time, you know, you can like have a house plant that you can kind of limp along for 6 months with hardly any water or anything. You do that with a cannabis plant, it'll be dead in 24 hours. You know what I mean? They're so, you know, so much more dynamic that way. So,
So when you first started cultivating, especially at that high in altitude, you know, did you find that there were unique challenges at growing, you know, not only at that altitude, but without some of the outside pressures that a lot of us get down here as far as heat, as far as humidity,
lack of insects, you know, and then pest pressure.
There's
some lovely things about it, I would say.
So maybe enlighten our listeners a little bit about some of the highlights and maybe some of the challenges of working at that altitude.
Well, some of the major highlights that initially kind of even encouraged us to grow up there was obviously lack of pests. You know, we have, you know, there's just very few pests up there, which is awesome. And I thought too, the dry atmosphere, you know, is helpful when it does come with, you know, with
you guys pulling in outside air. Yeah.
Yep.
So a lot of places you're not doing that.
Exactly. And that cold air too. So we don't have any air, you know, we have heaters, no air conditions. You know?
Okay.
So, you know, we can exchange.
Holla.
Oh, lovely.
We can like completely exchange the air in our bloom room in like a minute and 30 seconds. So you can pull in dry, cold air, you know, and switch it all around.
And how do you have a way to temper that in the winter so that it's not?
I do. So I kind of balance everything between a humidistat, thermostat, humidistat, my heater, and I also have a CO2. So we have a CO2 tank outside our facility that a truck comes up and fills because we do want to we keep that pumping in there. And we have hoses that go around our light rack. So when the fans are all off, the CO2 kicks on and drops down. When the fans kick on, whether they kick on for humidity or they kick on for temperature or whatever the reason may be, the CO2 will shut off. Same thing when my lights go off and it gets cold, my heater will kick on. So I had to kind of get everything balanced and dialed in. And I thought in the beginning, I was like, okay, you know, it took time. I got that each, you know, humidistat, how they play off each other, how it can kind of get my perfect environment. And I was so proud of myself. I thought, I've got it. Now I just have to sit back, you know, every year is going to be this. Well, and then all of a sudden 3 months, you know, after the next cycle, completely different weather, completely,
season
you know,
right.
Shoot. Now it's, you know, negative 20 degrees outside and dumping snow and 90% humidity.
Yep.
That affects my indoor environment, even though you think like a controlled indoor environment, it is still majorly affected by the outdoor
and drying and everything.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so
what are you working with as far as your flower rooms?
So I have 2 bloom rooms and there are 20 lights in each room, 40 by 20. So the whole building's 40 by 40, but 2 levels.
And little plug, you've been running the DLI gear as far as the HPSs for the last, long as you've been doing it.
Yep.
We just switched you over to the LEDs, the Apexes.
The Apex.
So I'm eager to see the results on that. One thing, I mean, you know, I've been in the facility multiple times. You know, Anthony put in an amazing amount of thought into the rooms that you built, with the winches, with being able to raise and lower the light, the benches, as far as how they're built. One thing that you guys do that's really unique that I love, you guys hand water.
Yes, we do. We are hands-on as much as we possibly can be. We're just at that right size where we can still be hands-on with every plant and really pay attention to every plant and give it all the attention it needs. And that's huge because if you start to get too big and it starts to get too overwhelming, I think you kind of just look at it as a mass. And when I was in the beginning and I was growing and I wasn't quite as dialed, it was a little bit more like that. I was kind of generalizing some things. And just while I was trying to figure it out. And, you know, now that I'm a little more settled and a little bit more dialed in with things, it's really cool because you can just, you know, before you even see any little thing happen, you know, if you're in there hand watering, you're looking at the plants.
I always say,
every plant every day.
Plants.
Every plant every day.
See like, oh, that leaf color is a little little off, or why is that getting up immediately? Oh, it's heavy. Skip that one tomorrow. You
guys do with a very thin and lean crew. Feel free to shout out your crew. Shameless shout out to your wonderful husband as well.
Thank you. Yes, it is a small crew. My husband Jay, who's oh my gosh, he's my right hand man and everything. He does. Today he carried up 200 plants, I think, into the new bloom room, and talk about our new switch. The LED lights went on for the first time this morning, so we just moved our plants into the LED. So we're pretty excited.
Excellent.
But and then I have Anthony, who, like he had mentioned, just completely built me a top of the line, state of the art facility meant to be for a grow.
And you guys have some pretty, this is going to be a good segue here, but you guys have some pretty unique things in your room where you actually have a stage in your room. Is that
well? First off, I like to point out when you had the website up, people probably don't. When it says the facility, that's the facility. I know it doesn't look like it. I
was going to ask,
but it's very elegantly built. You wouldn't think that, but that is it.
Did you guys? Did you guys purpose build that building? And you obviously gave it the look so it blends in with town.
Exactly. We even put the
I wasn't sure if you guys fixed an old building. I've been in there. So, I mean, I know that it was, it's definitely 100% purpose built. There's nothing. Anthony, this is pre everybody doing GrowLink and a lot of these other setups. And the way Anthony set the place up with the cabinets and everything, it is so cherry. You know what I mean? It's really, I always, I've been doing this a long time and I've worked on big facilities a long time. And I always refer to some of the legacy buildings, and yours is really one of the end of the Gen 1 buildings that was really done right.
That's cool.
Yeah. Because it was Gen 1, but not legacy. Because legacy, honestly, I'll be honest, here in Colorado,
when people using contactors and stuff like that.
Remember when we would go through like office buildings and they're growing in like the hallways and shit?
Yours, the way Anthony set it up is great. I love it. The winches is great. Like I said, we have
very, very, very well thought out. You can see the DLIs in there, everybody. We'll get, and in fact, you can check out and we'll make sure you guys got all their IG page information.
It's killer. Look at, I love the numbers on the wall. So Anthony knows, so everybody knows how high the lights are and stuff. Even if you're not raising and lowering your lights to increase and decrease par, just having that ability to have those so you can clean them and maintenance and stuff like that. Keeping people, as someone who's run really big cultivations, if I can keep people off a ladder, you know what I mean? It's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to save you a ton of liability. So the way it's thought out is so great, and it makes it really work for you guys really well. Before we get into the stage, before we get into the stage and why it's there, I want to discuss how you guys have a very unique ethos in that you're cracking a lot of seeds, and you're really, I guess I'll just have you explain it to us, because you're pairing up the musicians. What's going on there?
Okay.
Well, and first off, I love that you guys actually do a lot of your own genetics, and we talk a lot about this, Gabe, is selecting for your environment, especially being 10. Where are you going to go get a plant that's specialized for growing at 10-4? Anybody? Anybody? Exactly. So, I mean, to that point, making sure that you're actually selecting for your room, I think is really, really, really been important for you guys. And I will take a shameless New Millennium plug here. These were some of the guys that were actually literally the beta testers for us before New Millennium even had a label. It was Sharpies, the Sharpie days, right?
Sharpie I tell bottles. You guys, you hear legends of the Sharpie.
And I tell you guys that, like, literally, this is truly a cannabis specific line that was developed here in Colorado with growers, putting it out, putting it in people's hands, taking the feedback, tweaking it. And these guys are long time supporters of New Millennium.
For real people.
So anyhow, thank you guys for doing what you did for us as well, because that's obviously helps us literally be sitting here today.
If it grows well at 10-4, we know it works.
Since we're doing a shameless plug, might as well say JugDealers.shop completely up. So if you want to try some new,
that looks good, Grambo.
Everything is here, available, shipped right to you, baby.
Wow. All right, this has been a long time coming, guys. We are very proud of it. Grambo, thank you for all your hard work on that.
Of course.
Trying to make, we got to make stuff available for the people.
So, I mean, beta testing. New Millennium.
Let's see, where can the reason I went with seeds was mostly because the facility was brand new, untouched. I was like, I can't go get clones and bring in mites and bring in pests and mildew and all that stuff. I was like, I just can't do it. So I started with seeds right out of the gate. And
awesome.
you're right. I mean, it was really important to do that hunt, to find that specific one that was best in that environment, and wanted to do what I could. So that was a lot of fun with all that. And New Millennium I have been a huge fan from day one.
You guys rock it.
We love it.
You rock it.
And I tried, my first year or two, I tried a couple different ones, and we actually met Bo, I think, when he was at the Big Tomato.
Oh, wow. Way back.
Yep. So we've been buddies for a long time, and kind of started talking with him about different stuff. And he started mentioning this new line that he was working on and brought it up and wanted my feedback, and immediately noticed major results from anything I had used before. And so it was I
got forced to use it, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I never turned back. And every time people were like, use this, I'm like, nah.
Yeah. I was like,
good.
I know what I'm doing. Well, and it's so funny. People love to, if they're having an issue in the garden, I think the first thing is, it's the nutrients, oh, it's nutrients. And it's like,
always
probably the last thing.
Yeah. I'll tell you right now, it's the pH.
Yes.
It's the pH. Check your pH.
It's like, it's all down to gut health.
Check your pH, people.
For sure. And there's so many other factors involved. It's usually not the nutrients.
Not the nutrients.
and then
there's a bunch of scientists that want you to
they
follow
really,
the directions.
Right. They
pH.
want you to do well. I promise you. No formulator out there is like, oh, I'm going to fuck everybody's day up with this stuff.
Well, and it's like, no matter how good the nutrients are, if you're going to be powering the plant and overwatering and
you're a chemist, you got a chemistry degree. I mean,
that stuff makes sense.
If there's somebody who should be testing these things, probably someone who understands.
My background from that definitely has helped with all my record keeping, all my logs. I have, so many books and calendars.
Right.
And
the building when I come in, it's always 100% on top. So how did you start? Where did you come up with the idea to pair harvests with music?
Yeah, and let's get back to the stage. And whose forethought was it to put the stage in there? I'm also curious about that.
So it's kind of funny because so when you walk in the facility, since it's a big square, when you want to go, it's a hallway to enter. Well, Anthony figured, why would I make that whole hallway a ceiling? Why wouldn't I just close it off so that this room has extra storage?
Right, because the building goes up high.
Yeah, and
right.
like you utilize as much space as you possibly can. And so you made it kind of boxed in.
Perfect place for a stage above.
In the grow, then it makes a perfect little platform up there. And it wasn't even originally thought to be a stage. It was mostly just for good space and for storage, and everything like that. But we opened our doors on 4/20/2020. And and it was right, when COVID was in the thick of it all, and so we were, it was kind of convenient because I had been a bartender at Keystone Ski Resort 19 years before that, so it was kind of convenient that the bar was closing and kind of sending us home, and I was already planning to open the facility at that time anyway. So we moved into there and we started growing and kind of locked and loaded for those first few months. And many of our good friends are in the music industry. And so one of them, Keller Williams, is a solo musician, and he would stay in Keystone often and do a bunch of concerts there. And he, during COVID, since he wasn't touring and wasn't doing concerts, he ended up kind of doing an extended stay in Keystone. He was there for about a month.
So that was the first.
And he likes weed.
That was the first show.
That worked out.
So had you...
So I reached out to him because he was down in his condo and he was coming up and hanging out and having fires. And I was like, Keller, would you want to come in and surprise my crew when they were working one night?
They all had the masks on, didn't they? I remember seeing
Yes, I remember
that.
And I was
There's
like,
Andy Hall. Yeah. Oh.
And so I was like, would you want to do? And he was like, hell yes. He's like, my family's sick of hearing me play. I want to play with
I need
somebody.
the gig, man. I need something. I don't care if it's 4 people.
And and as we all know, the plants like it.
I mean,
plants
love it.
I mean, how can you not, And so I told him, he was all about it. So I was like, okay. So I had Jay and my friend Levi set up the whole little guitar area up on that little stage, and nobody knew he was coming. And I had him.
Keller only needs himself.
Yeah,
he's good.
He didn't need anything else.
He's totally fine.
And so he put his hood up, and he came in, and he snuck in, and he got up there, and he ripped off his hood and just started rocking out. And all my friends I had a couple friends over, and there was about 8 of us.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Look at that. That's great. That's such a great picture. Look at that.
It was so fun, and we just rocked so hard. And I thought he was going to maybe just play a couple songs. He ended up doing a 2-hour set.
He just kept going. He's like, no, really, I want to play. That's awesome.
We just danced and rocked and had so much fun.
I mean, yeah.
What a cool experience.
One of the first really good live shows I saw 22 years ago or something in Kansas City. And it was Yonder Mountain, Keller Williams and Bela Fleck and the Flecktones.
Yeah.
And one of like that tour was absolutely incredible. Kind of definitely gave me a little bit of my bluegrass journey. In fact, Yonder was my wife and I's first date in Albuquerque like 20 years ago, blah, 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 blah. But I was like, who is this guy? Now, of course, he came up, did his one-man band thing, which I was very blown away with, but then also led the encore of all 3 bands. I was like, oh.
Yep.
Keller's always
very
it's funny because anybody nowadays who does the loops, you see there's a lot of different musicians who kind of build those loops.
Yeah.
Keller really was one of the first guys who really started, and I want to say that was like mid 90s. I mean, he's a fish kid.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's the same. I mean, he's the same as me. He's obviously way different, but he grew
I
up
love his Grateful Grass stuff. Shout out on the Grateful Grass stuff. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Keller's always been amazing. So I mean, that's the first, and since then you've had a handful of artists kind of play on that little stage in there.
Saw some string dusters lurking in the garden there.
I'm jumping forward. Did he pair with you to name that harvest as well?
When he was done, after he played and everything, we were taking pictures in the garden and I was looking at the buds, and you have to give a unique name, harvest name in the metric system in the Colorado tracking system.
Okay.
And most just kind of use the date and the strain, and I was like, unique name, that could be kind of fun. And and so I asked Keller, I was like, do you want to name this next harvest? And he was like, absolutely, and so he named it Love Song. And I was like, well, that's cool. And so from there I was like, wouldn't it be neat to have a unique name for every harvest moving forward? And then I was like, and I could have a different, one of our different musician friends name it, because one, they can come in and play music for the plants and play in the garden. And they can also, I can play their music 24/7 throughout the bloom as well.
Right. Well, and if I must be honest, Gabe and I get to talk weed all the time. Okay. Which is fun, which is great. And this is what we're here for. But I'll be honest, like the music end of it is a very interesting thing to me. You guys go out and see, as much or more live music than about anybody out there. I can tell you that. And honestly, jealous at times, there's no doubt about it. And it just so happens to be a lot of the same music that I love.
Dude,
I
tell people all the time, I wouldn't be where I'm at in life if it wasn't for the Grateful Dead and Fish. And most of the people I know in this industry, I know from seeing those bands. I mean, I remember seeing Keller, I want to say at Coyotes back in the 90s, dude.
Sure.
Like on like a, in a room that's maybe twice the size of this, and like here in Denver, he was, people hadn't really discovered him yet.
Right.
And so it's really cool. I mean, Keller's huge nowadays.
So, and I know, Jay plays music, obviously, and obviously you can, shout out his band if you'd like, but I know that he plays music and is always having fun people come around. How did you guys, you guys are obviously in a pretty particular sector. I have some questions about some particular people, but like, how did you get kind of into the crew you guys are in, which is a pretty badass crew?
It was a couple funny things. So yes, my husband is a drummer. He plays with High Five and Sunday Bankers up in Summit County, and they've been a band for about 20 years too. And used to tour more and do more early on, but kind of learned that we can actually stay up in the ski resort world and kind of hang there, and they can get some pretty steady.
It's kind of like the Jersey Shore, any resort town.
We're just going to stay here.
Yep. So it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of nice. So, and then as far as getting to know some of our friends, I'm trying to think, well, Michael Travis from the String Cheese Incident, was probably our first random person we met after a show, and we're huge String Cheese fans. Grateful Dead, huge, did Fish for a long time. Then actually saw Keller open up for orchestra, Dead Orchestra. What am I thinking?
DSO.
Yes, thank you.
Dark Star, baby.
Yes, Dark Star. Thank you. I saw him open for Dark Star in '99 in Chicago.
Wow,
1999.
That's awesome.
And kind of got into all of that, and then, but then we ended up meeting Michael Travis, I think, in like 2003, and we actually started showing him like pictures of Montezuma and just talked about, because we met him in South Carolina, but we told him we lived in Colorado and just kind of hit it off, and he loves the mountains. And from there,
they saw your mellies and they were like, these people are
yes.
Well, and ironically, our neighbor at that time was she's the original seamstress of
Melons.
So she would bring me home boxes of just, I have skirts, I have custom made one of a kind that Melons on a skirt.
Now you got to get appointments.
I know, I don't have any new gear.
Appointments, dude. You gotta wait a year to get a sweatshirt, bro. What are you talking about?
But I do love my melodies.
But from there, Michael just kind of started inviting us backstage, and we got to know some other people. And then I guess one of the kind of the biggest moves was, so one of our good friends, Jesse Arito, was the manager for String Cheese. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. But he's an amazing man and he was awesome. And so we met him backstage one time and he just, we became good buddies. And he was like, I've got a good friend coming up to Keystone this week. And I'm hoping he's got us a couple shows. I'm hoping you can kind of help him out, like hook him up, maybe some ski school and maybe take him out, show him around.
Sure.
We're like, of course, anything, what, who? And he's like, Keller Williams. And I'm like, yeah, I think that'll work.
Yeah.
Handled.
I had stuff, but it cleared. Yeah, right.
Yeah, totally.
Schedule just got cleared.
And so, like, the second we met Keller, we always laugh because the second we met him, he's like, my new best friends. And we literally just hit it off. And we have been super tight since. And so with him, it's cool because he used to do these shows in Keystone where he would do these little ones. And that was where we met him. And he was like, you helped me so much with these shows. He's like, if I come back next year and every year and I want to do this, will you help? And I was like, oh, of course. And he's like, okay, then you get to choose my lineup. And I was like, really? And he's like, every year you get to choose the lineup that I'll play with because he would do a little compilation. Sure. Usually Colorado musicians is what we kind of focused on. And so and we were just kind of becoming friends with the String Dusters. We had met Andy Thorne. All of it was just kind of real organic and random stuff. And then I kind of started being able to pull those little events together with Keller. And then being buddies with him, you get to meet all kinds of, he's
right. It's like it starts here and then it just gets wider.
Yeah, he's a faucet.
Yep.
And of course, I'm a big fan of Leftover Salmon. And speaking of Mr. Andy Thorne, the Fox Man, you are Barry's godparents, correct? Okay. Yes. Yeah. So that's Andy's son. He's the banjo player for Leftover Salmon, which is a fantastic Colorado band. Drew Emmett's amazing. A lot
of good bluegrass.
Yeah. A lot of
slam
good
grass,
jam grass, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Well, Thorne's was a pretty funny meeting too, because he came up to the basin. We were hanging out, and Jay's band was playing in the 6th Alley, the old 6th Alley. This was 12, 15 years ago. And so a friend of a friend kind of introduced Andy to us. I was in the crowd. Jay was playing, and we're like, "Oh, if you have your banjo, we'd love for you to." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't bring it." And I was like, "Oh, no worry, no worries."
Somebody's got a spare.
And so he sat down and he's like hanging out, and then about 2 or 3 songs later, he came over to me. He's like, "Do you mind if I go grab my banjo?"
Yes,
and I was like,
Andy,
you
dog.
Smart. I was like, just so you don't feel the pressure to have to get up on every stage you walk by.
And it's like, well, let me just feel them out for a second. I don't know if I want to play with these guys.
So that hit that off.
That's awesome. Again, big fan of Andy. Andy, shout out to you. Come out. We'd love to have you on the show. Bring the banjo, play for the folks. I know he's definitely involved with some cannabis stuff as well. Always just shouting out your guys' stuff. And in fact, let's very quickly talk about where can you get Mountain Orchid products?
So we sell primarily our premium flower to Mountain Annie's Cannabis dispensaries, there's 4 outlets. They're down in Silverton, Durango, Ridgeway, and Cortez.
When she says down in, that means up in the mountains. But if you need flower in the mountains,
you have to go down.
Yeah,
everything's below 10.4. Okay,
summertime's coming, so look for Mountain Orchid on the shelf for sure.
And then we also have Dank's been a long time supporter, and
excellent.
We just love Dank.
Greg,
love those guys
speak of the music scene and how I know people. I've known Greg. I've known Greg since the early days. And Greg's honestly, Greg's been a fixture in the music. Both him and Jonesy have been fixtures in the music scene for years. I
think Jay, one of his first gigs was like opening for Jonesy and Gamut. So,
really?
Gamut's a hell of a percussion player, and then his partner Jonesy is a amazing sax player. And I always talk about those guys. We'll actually have to get Gamut on the show one of these days, but he actually works with one of our good friends out in California, Mike Finelli and Phil Haig.
Cool.
And then he's actually him and Jonesy are badges 26 and 27.
Those are early.
They're the first early. They're the first 2 badges in Colorado after the MED. So cool. Ironically enough, I just renewed my badge today. It expires tomorrow. I went into that was what I did this morning, I figure I go into grows enough and my number's so low that I just
can't give it up.
It's hard for me to pay the $50 a year to keep it. I'm screw it.
Back to the music. How lucky did you guys getting Dillon Amphitheater too? How awesome has that been?
That's been convenient too with some of our
I was about to say
the hosts have been able to kind of play there. And
I have noticed
Green Sky last year.
I'm a big Paul Hoffman fan as well. Definitely love Green Sky. Paul's voice.
Primus is playing this year. I'll be up there with my son for that show because it's going to be amazing. One real cool thing about that venue, not to brag too much about it, is people with boats.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was like right on the lake there, but yeah.
That's the hack,
people.
huh?
Yep.
The boats.
Yeah, it's
Actually, High Five, Jay's band is playing. They're opening up for Mo this year, this summer. At the Dillon
super
Amphitheater.
cool.
All right. What's the date of that, by the way?
Monday, July 29th. So it's one of the free shows they have at the amphitheater. Monday free shows at the amphitheater are really awesome.
All right.
Okay.
That sucks.
Mountain Hack.
That's right after
That's-
Rocky
there's a
Grass,
lot
which I
going
go
on
to every year with my family.
Busy time.
I might have to come up with my kid for a free Monday show.
It's fun.
I'm a huge Mo
29th.
fan. Yeah, I'm a huge Mo fan. I actually just saw him at Washington's recently in Fort Collins, and they're playing 2 nights at the Mish too, August 3rd and 4th, I believe. But Mo's a great band. They're I mean, what a great bunch of guys. I mean, what a bunch of guys that like fell into that pocket of where you can be successful and loved and tour Japan and do all kinds of cool shit and do your own festivals and everything else, but literally still walk anywhere in the world and nobody really knows who they are.
Right.
Like they really they hit it.
Well,
Kind of like being Disco Biscuits.
But they hate each other.
And I was going to say, Travis Book last year, he came over after the String Dusters played at the amphitheater, and he did his new solo in the garden, and the acoustics in there were absolutely amazing. I mean, it was just breathtaking.
So
He just stood in there with a guitar and just let it go, and his voice is so amazing too, and so booming, and that was special. That was a good one for sure.
Yeah. All right. July 29th, High Five opening for Mo up in Dillon. All right. Jeez.
Yep,
I guess that's the show before they play Fort Collins, because I'm going to see him right after that. Well, whatever. Mini tour. Tour.
Come camp in Zuma.
I bet. Well, here's the thing. I'm already going to have all the gear because I'm going to be at Rocky Grass for the whole weekend before that.
I don't know if the snow will be melted by then.
This season, it's hard to say.
Well, it was funny. I was telling you before the show, the only before I came up to see you guys, the only way I had come into Montezuma is from the other way,
right?
Which is you got to have
less
some
traveled.
and you got to have some serious hardware to get over that. Because I mean, yeah, I had I had a rock crawler that I did it in, and awesome. even then there was one time where
it was a little hairy.
You got up to the top of the pass, and all of a sudden there's like a big snow wall, and you're like, damn it, we got to turn around.
Radical Hill.
Yeah, Radical Hill.
Awesome.
Radical Hill is crazy up there. So it's you're living in
Radical Hill.
Yeah, and they're living in the shadow of 14ers for sure. It's wild up there. You better bring your lungs.
It's cool.
You know,
and so obviously you guys skiers, right there. Were you a skier in Missouri? I mean, because I know like I grew up in Missouri as well, and we made the annual pilgrimages out to Colorado.
In Missouri?
No, we had to make the pilgrimages out to Colorado.
Valley.
All right, yeah, we had Snow Creek. Maybe it used to be a dump. I don't know.
I was going to say, is that an old trash dump that got snowed on?
We're not exactly as bad as Michigan, but close. No, we would just drive across the wonderful state of Kansas, half of Colorado that felt like Kansas, and then you finally get to some mountains. So no, I skied Winter Park a bunch as a kid. It was still an affordable activity to do at that time. It's a little bit not as affordable these days.
What's the home mountain for you? Keystone or A Basin?
A Basin.
Yeah, I got
A Basin's definitely. I mean, we worked for Keystone for a long time, and
I know you. I heard that. That's why I asked.
Kind of do that, but A Basin's still always been our.
I love the Outback. When the snow's good, the Outback is amazing. And I did do 68 miles an hour on Go Devil. So
nice.
I got a little bit.
Here's the problem with Keystone though. It's a double fall line.
Yeah, you're
on edge the whole time. You
okay,
ride.
Mr. Snowboarder, it don't matter to me, bro.
Except for the Outback.
2 of those.
As I say, we did ski it. So we skied a ton. I haven't since COVID. So when COVID hit and all the resorts shut down, is when I actually became completely addicted to snowshoeing.
Yeah. I mean, that's so convenient.
I mean, it's wild where you live.
So convenient.
Just love it back there. And we have we got a puppy also kind of during COVID too. So we can take her back
COVID
there
dog,
and
there's a lot of those.
And now we still love to ski and do that. But I have to say, I almost probably get more time on the snowshoes than I do on my skis.
Right on.
Was Montezuma a mining town?
Montezuma was definitely a mining town.
What were they mining up there?
Silver mostly. They came for gold, but ended up finding mostly silver.
Yeah, a lot of Colorado's. What was the population at the height?
At the height, it was actually bigger than Denver, and I think there was
Montezuma was bigger. Really?
At the time, obviously. Not currently.
Yeah. Well, I know. I want to say Leadville, and there were 2 towns where the Climax mine is that are actually buried. Yeah. But there was I want to say there was maybe 50, 60, even 70,000 people.
Red Mountain Pass had 7 towns or something like that at one point in time. Same crap. You're just like, whoa.
If you ever get the chance,
a lot of folks up there.
It's weird because it's, you obviously want to keep these places off the radar, but at the same time, you know, if you do ever get some time to go out in the mountains of Colorado, there's some really interesting history out there. You know, I've spent some time up on the Champion Mine and Independence Pass, and you know, between, you know, if you go and hike Mount Sherman, which is one of the 14ers, you know, there's a mine up at 12,000 feet up there. The Champion Mine was one of the longest cable cars and highest cable cars in the world. And what it took to build these towns, you know, in the 1800s, you know, is pretty insane. You know, if you look at places like where I grew up on the East Coast, you know, East Coast in the 1800s was already fully developed.
Right.
You know, it was a place that, you know, you had cities that had running water, all the rest of the stuff. Whereas, you know, as far as I can tell, the 1890s, boy, they had some really hard winters.
Near as I can tell in the weather record, it was
the fact that a place like Montezuma had at one point 5,000 people and now has 100 homes.
Yeah.
You know, in which half of them are inhabited and half of them are people who are only there part of the time. So it's
and we had a couple of major fires in our town that just wiped out.
I believe it. Yeah,
so that's why, you know, in every hotel and restaurant and bar, we had like a couple story hotels and stuff like that, but they were all attached. So when you'd have one fire,
it just took the whole thing out.
Okay,
start over.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, and none of them were really built to last at that point. You know, a lot of those towns were like, get this stuff up. I need a roof over my head. The quality is not really of the highest concern. You know, we just need something.
Pretty cool. You know, if you ever get a chance, just pass through.
Don't stop.
Well,
because there's a lot of signs on the roads that say you're not allowed to park there, because
even though there appears like there's a lot of parking
they're
available.
not looking for any new customers. So
unless they're dispensary customers,
yeah, unless
and then
they want to buy the flower, in which they can go buy it down in Summit County.
Yeah,
but you know.
Well, I'd like to say, you know, very much thank you to both of you guys. You guys are long-term supporters. This is always a pleasure. I do, just like Gabe says, very much enjoy coming up and visiting. We need to do something where we spend a whole afternoon, do some food, like just do nice. I want to shoot an
episode. I'd like to shoot a time up there. The one thing, and you know, I love this system, but they're on the flip-flop. So right now it's very hard for us to get up there because the lights aren't on until 6 p.m. but on the next harvest, I want to try and figure out.
It's muddy right now. It's very muddy right now.
Here's the thing: if I screw it up like I did last time to get up there, I have to wait 2 months until I can get up there again. And that was, I'm going to admit, that was my fault. Timing is of the essence. But you know,
this summer too, I know you get on top of all kinds of 14ers. It'd be fun to get you on some hikes.
And I want to get back. I'll be honest with you. It's been a while since I've been up on Red Cone and some of that stuff up there, and it is quite amazing country back where they are. It's if you haven't ventured out on a 14er, go do it, because it'll change your life. You know, something cool. Well, in fact, Jaron and I got a couple of cool trips planned this summer. We're actually both, funny enough, we just figured this out. We're both doing different sections of the Grand Canyon the same weekend. I pulled a permit. I pulled a permit for Cottonwood and Bright Angel. So we'll be hiking from North Rim to South Rim, and he's going to be doing
Havasu Falls. So, down to the bottom, down to the falls.
You know, we'll have some reports later this year, but this one, I think mine's 26. But it's but you're cross. I mean, 22. Like I'm saying, I said to my buddy, I'm doing it with him. Like, dude, so few people, you know, get these experiences, and it's like,
I want to say Havasu Falls is one. Well, any permit in the Grand Canyon stuff to get. I want to say Havasu Falls is the most difficult one to get in the U.S. It sells out in less than 2 minutes every year. Wow. Very, very few people are, because it's a reservation on the bottom, so very few people are allowed in. Yeah,
concert tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Hey, look,
harder than getting fish tickets at the Sphere.
I know how to get tickets.
It's harder than a Taylor Swift ticket.
Now that, unfortunately, might be as applicable.
You know, I said something to someone. I said something to someone about the price of fish tickets to the Sphere, and they're like, "Have you ever tried to buy a Taylor Swift ticket?" And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Go buy a Taylor Swift ticket. Like, they're a lot of money." And I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, $6,000, $7,000, $1,000." I'm like, "What are you talking about?
For what?"
I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So
no wonder she's a damn billionaire.
My complaining about $500 Sphere tickets is on deaf ears.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's not on these deaf ears. But anyhow, and I digress. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Always coming at you from the Jug Den here at 5-8 Distribution, all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Until next time, check out the Mountain Orchid. Check them out on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, guys. See y'all soon.
Thank you.
Peace.